I can't tell you how glad I am to be here. And as I walked into the room earlier and saw all of you, one of the things that keeps hitting me when I come to places like this is I wish I could talk to each one of you. Because as parents of a child with diabetes, I mean, each one of you, one-on-one, because we all have something in common right away. And actually many things in common, but one of them is, if I asked you right now, you could tell me the exact age of your child when they were diagnosed. You could tell me where you were when you got the news. You could tell me the date. We all have that sort of etched in our mind. Now, this is my family at the time my son was diagnosed 5 years ago on January 7th, 2002, when he was 7. I don't really need to tell you the details. He was wetting his bed, he was drinking a lot, but all of us have that same hospitalization in common. There he is in the hospital bed, parent. You're inundated with an enormous amount of information. Your child is really sick, and your life, as you know it, comes to an abrupt halt, at least temporarily. One thing for me, and for some of you, will be you got the news that the same insulin you're required to give could also cause a seizure or a coma, which of course made my mind go blank, and then I couldn't absorb half of what else was said. And then you go home, and we have similarities in common there too. Your child's blood sugars are going crazy, at least in the beginning. We are sleepless and anxious and sometimes really angry. We're all trying to read and listen and take the advice of enormous numbers of people, your doctor, your nurse, your nutritionist, and then if you have one, a school nurse, the child's doctor, teachers, and then of course well-meaning neighbors and friends. And so you just are inundated, and mostly you're trying to keep your child safe and alive while not appearing too freaked out. But see, I didn't know we all had this in common at the time, because my son, when he was diagnosed, I didn't know another child with diabetes, I didn't know an adult with diabetes. My husband was calm when we went home. I just kept thinking, there must be something wrong with me. Why is my hand shaking when I go to give a shot, you know? Why can't I sleep through the night? Why am I having so much trouble relaxing? And one of the big problems for me is, why can't I absorb this information that everyone is giving me? Why do I feel so confused? And one of the things was, I kept wondering, why is everyone else's life, they're going on as if life is normal, and mine isn't. But I learned something very interesting about this. I finally found this study. Researchers studied the parents of 52 children, and just look at the bottom line. At diagnosis, 22% of mothers at 6 weeks met the full diagnostic criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder. And a year later, 20% still had it. And then you'll see the numbers for fathers below, 14% at diagnosis, 8% later. Now, post-traumatic stress disorder, I'm going to show you the symptoms. See if you recognize any of them in yourself at some point. Now, to fit full diagnostic criteria, you have to have all of them. But imagine the amount of us that have some. I learned two other important pieces of information that I'd like to share with you, because I learned them too late to really help myself. I went to a diabetes support group of 40 families, and when I walked in, the counselor said to us, okay, I'm going to show you something about this group. And she said, how many of you sleep soundly through the night? Not one hand went up. And then she said, okay, and how many of you are experiencing marital stress due to the diabetes? Every hand went up. I just think that knowing these things can help, that you're not alone. In our situation, when we got home, Danny's blood sugars were all over the map. He had headaches, he had stomach aches, he had rashes. He would fall asleep, sometimes clutching his stomach, rolling around, saying, Mommy, make it go away. I took him to the pediatrician and the endocrinology team, and for those symptoms, they couldn't help us. And eventually I quit my job, and I just started researching and reading and emailing and trying to figure out everything I could about diabetes. And what I realized is that the doctors hadn't had enough time to tell me all of the information out there that would help me. Now, one of the things I found was that the average A1C in the country, in this country for children, is 8.5 for the hemoglobin A1C. And Danny was at 8.2, and the doctors had been saying that's great in our situation, and they had said we were in the good to excellent range. And yet, when I read about the American Diabetes Association recommendations, they said stay under 7.0 to avoid long-term complications. Just that one thing spurred me to feel like, okay, even though the doctors are saying we're doing great, I want to do better. And especially because my son was so uncomfortable with all the highs and lows. I quickly realized two things: that just focusing on insulin alone just wasn't doing it for us. And the other one was, if we were going to make the changes I felt like we were starting to have to make in exercise and diet, that we were going to have to make them together as a family. So over a period of 2 years, we changed things very dramatically, which is the rest of what I'm going to talk about. Danny's blood sugars improved. Mostly we were just trying to get him comfortable, not as much about the blood sugars, but ended up being that his hemoglobin A1Cs were under 6.5 for the most part. His headaches, stomach aches, rashes disappeared. He was much more healthy, much more comfortable and happy. His moods were better. And what I noticed is that the whole family felt better. So these are some of the changes that we made. We really had to work on getting a lot more support for the family. Worked on communication. It was hard in the beginning to talk to people about what was happening. Improving nutrition and increasing exercise. Now, I'm going to make it look like it was so organized, but only for the purposes of this talk. I would say in the things that we did that I'm going to talk about, it was 1 step forward and 2 steps back, and we just tried to keep going. Now, I already had, there's our family, and my parents were our best source of support. I think in looking around and saying things aren't going that well and we need help, it's really important to see who the helpers are that step up and try to cultivate that support. But even though we had our parents, we also widened our circle. And I'm just going to run down some of the sources that I thought you might want to think about in terms of who might be the best support in your particular community. Now the question was, how do we get it? I was very shy about talking about the diabetes, but I found communication was the biggest thing. And I thought in order to show it, I would just give you an example of how we work together as a family. In our family, I realized we needed to hear from the kids. They were 7 and 10, definitely had their own opinions. And so the first thing we did was we started family meetings, and all that meant was having dinner together and then saying you can't be excused. And just having time to talk. And at one of these dinners, little Danny piped up and said he knew he could have some sweets, but he was tired of having sweets all the time, all around him that he was being tempted by. Because it was so hard to watch everyone else eat without him. And so what we did, I'm just going to give you an example. In our case, once we heard that, we decided that we wanted to tell as many people as possible in his situations. For example, we went to the babysitter. And we said, you know what, instead of saying, let's take Danny to ice cream, how about taking him for a walk to the park? And we talked to his coach at soccer. And I finally got up the guts to go up and say, you know what, you're giving the kids popsicles. Would it be okay if I brought a sugar-free pop or something Danny could have that wasn't going to spike him so much? Same thing at school. You know, you just have to think of all the things your kids are exposed to. His teacher, when we finally talked, was offering him Tootsie Rolls, you know, the whole class. If you get the answer right, you get a Tootsie Roll. It's very awkward. I'm trying to think. We also, one of the things that I hadn't learned until we got home is that some insurance companies will pay for a visiting nurse to come and help you. And we ended up having Danny's friends' parents come over to our house, and along with our neighbors, and we asked the visiting nurse who had a child with diabetes, we were lucky with that, to come and talk to them about the diabetes and about the food choices, and then we suggested some snacks that we could even send with Danny that would be great for him. You know, there's Trader Joe's has those carrots with hummus is it, and all different of the celery with peanut butter. We would send over granola bars. I know there's Lara bars out here that Danny's blood sugars do well with. We sent fruit, things like that. So I'm just saying that because, as you see, someone in the family brought up an issue. We had a family meeting, which we didn't call that. We talked to everyone around, and then, you know, interestingly enough for us, we went with to our next appointment. We said, oh, we're working on this great thing to help Danny have less temptation with sugar. And our medical team said to us, the doctor at the time said, you know what, I really don't recommend this. You just don't want to create an eating disorder. So I think he should be eating what everyone else is eating, and you just cover it with insulin. And actually, for me, that was a breaking point with our medical team, because I just kept thinking we need the support of our team. And although we weren't saying he couldn't have any sweets, we were definitely trying to limit them. So I just add that into the mix, that opening communication with your medical team is so important. We ended up changing twice to find a doctor that we finally have who really understands us. She has diabetes, and when we go in with a question, and she'll say, of course I wouldn't eat a Tootsie Roll when I'm already 200. And you know, she just understands. And so I would encourage you, just ask yourself, are you comfortable with your team? Do you feel like you can be honest in appointments, and do you feel heard? Do you have the same philosophy? So I talked about, you know, looking for sources of support, opening the communication. Nutrition. I'm speaking as a parent and not as a nutritionist, but I'm finding in our own family that nutrition matters. I talked to you about the statistics already, and actually, even if we're not worried about long-term complications, I just see how much better my son does when he's not on that roller coaster ride of blood sugars, even in the short run. Now this is the East Coast and not California, and it's 5 years ago that we were diagnosed, but this is what Boston Children's Hospital sent us home with, and the important part is, for me, is that first sentence: don't let diabetes slow you down. You can still eat at fast food restaurants if you make healthy choices. And under there is no vegetable. This is all Pizza Hut and how to eat French fries. So my red flag went up. I protested, but I was told that a carb is a carb. And I went home, and I had the carb king also, as you mentioned. I had a child who, his only vegetable he would eat was a cucumber. He was mac and cheese. We called him Juice Boy. He was an incredibly picky eater. But we, over time, I'll tell you, I just read more and more in the research, and I became convinced that for a child with an autoimmune disorder, whole grains were better, vegetables were better, fruit was better. He needed to eat some protein, and he wasn't getting it. And we, as I said, were not at the time getting support from our medical team or our nutritionist to change his diet. Now, I know it's hard as a parent to change a diet. I didn't know how to do it, but I knew I wanted to. And again, it was messy, but I'm going to make it look easy with this list. I'm just talking about the top things that I think made a difference. We told the kids we were going to change their diet and our whole family's diet to improve overall health, not because of the diabetes, just because what I was learning. We spent a lot of time educating everyone. Oh, and I want to go. I just want to show you something about educating everyone. We call it indoctrination in my family, between my husband and I. I think that the way to educate everyone is as subtly as possible. One of the things on the right-hand side is a DVD that is a fabulous DVD about nutrition, actually, from a woman down in Arizona. Well, we picked a time, homework time. And so my husband and I sat down and watched a video in the room that the kids were doing homework. We didn't say, do you want to watch a nutrition video? Because of course they don't. But we put this on, and it was all about the benefits and why you would want to eat whole grains, why you would want to eat vegetables, and the kids were glued to it within minutes because they didn't have to do their homework then. Now on the other side is Consumer Reports, okay? This is a magazine. I put this in because recently I walked into the living room, and there's my husband with his Consumer Reports, and he's saying to the kids, can you believe Dunkin' Donuts? Do you see those cookies? In one cookie, there's a quarter cup of sugar. In one cookie, there's 29 grams of fat. And in one cookie, there is a quarter of the calories it takes in a whole day for an adult that they should be eating. This is the kind of thing where you're just slipping the information in, and we do call it indoctrination. So I'm just going back, just a couple of quick things. Every Sunday night now, no matter how much we hate it, my husband and I sit down, look at the week, make a menu, figure out what we're going to eat, and then we go off and do food shopping. We shop, again, shopping with goals in mind. Does it have nutritional value? Don't put it in the cart if it doesn't, is my recommendation. And we did have to clean out the house initially because I found we couldn't, if it was in there, for us, goldfish was a staple. It spiked Danny's blood sugar every time he ate it. Couldn't keep him out of the cabinet. Got it out of the house. Now, in terms of the carb as a carb, and I just, as a parent, and not as a nutritionist, am saying, it's not in my eyes. I just want to show you just one comparison from the USDA, Department of Agriculture, comparing a cup of whole wheat flour and a cup of white flour. Now, I'm just going to read the first 3 lines. Dietary fiber, which makes a difference in blood sugar control. 14 for whole wheat, 3 grams for white. Protein, 16 versus 13, and calcium, 41 versus 19. So in my mind, I don't know, we just wanted to find a way to make things different and to try to get Danny to eat differently. Now, as I said, he's stubborn, and so I'm just in this one area going to tell you what we did. He was a confirmed white bread eater. Wonder was the best for him. Once I started learning more, we went to Wonder Whole Wheat, which is only a change in color, because he was already so difficult to please. Then when he would take that, we went to Oat Bran, and do you know we had to do grilled cheese and French toast just to mask it, but then to show him this is what you've been eating. And then finally to whole wheat flour, whole wheat bread, sprouted grain is what he eats now. He really doesn't like anything else. Your taste changed with it. So now, I will say in all areas, if you told him here's a spinach salad, that's what he would want. And he has totally shifted. And what I did was, because I knew there wasn't much time, Kathleen Fraser was kind enough to put my 10 small changes to make big differences into your goodie bags. So you'll have that as well. It's a column I wrote for Diabetes in Control. I don't know how we do. Okay. So my last comment is about exercise. Let's see. Again, everyone wants to exercise more. We know we should. It's not a matter with kids of just parking further from the mall, right? It's not easy. But what we did was we had said to the whole family, we're doing it for our health, we're doing it for physical health, mental health, better glucose control for Danny, and fun. And we did it as a family. So we made a plan with the family, again, sitting after meals, not letting anyone leave the table. How are we going to do this? What are our goals? For us, same thing. We wanted to do it after meals if we could. We decided we're going to take a lot more walks after meals. If we're going to watch a movie, maybe we'd stop in the middle, walk around the block. Danny came up with tons of games. Basement. You cleared out a corner of the basement. You could hit the ball against the wall. We did all those kind of things because we were sitting at the table coming up with ideas. The biggest thing we did was limit media, because nothing compares, at least in my house, with the computer, games, and the TV. And so what we needed to do was we needed to say it wasn't available. And when it wasn't, and Danny was bored, you can bet he wanted to go out and play basketball with me in the street. It just made the whole argument much easier. So I just want to end with this picture. There he is now. I was very afraid as a parent to ask when Danny was diagnosed, what's it going to be like 5 years from now? Is he going to look sick? Is there going to be some symptoms that show that he has diabetes? And this fall, he's a soccer player. This fall, he went out for the travel team. And I will say that he was the only child in town, in the entire town, rated 5 for stamina. And I feel like there is that sense that, okay, life is not going to go back to how we knew it before. But if we can get a new sense of normal that feels okay inside and that's working for us and that brings our family closer together and gives us overall good health, then we've brought something into our life that maybe we didn't even have before. So thank you so much. I'd love to talk to any of you in the breakout session.